The focus for today is on the idea of drawing as a method in research and practice. So, I'm just going to say a few things before we start the first proper session of the day. One is to say that you can, of course, find any number of definitions of drawing in the literature. But for me, in my own drawing practice, drawing is a unique kind of space where something happens. So that space might be about the recognition or the registering of experience, perhaps in the form of narrative. It might be a processing of visual information or the emergence of something previously tacit, a mood, an idea, a set of impulses, connections, or imaginative projections. And drawing materials, whether they're crumbly or smooth, erasable, indelible, choices about format, posture, time, all these things shape and impact when I draw, and what happens when I draw. So sometimes what emerges from all this is kind of enigmatic, uncertain. Actually, sometimes it might not feel very significant, or certainly most of the time, but that is what drawing practice allows. So I think when we then take drawing intentionally from practice into the arena of research, when we aim to find something out, produce something new to share, it kind of becomes necessary to ask some questions, maybe different kinds of questions. I think it becomes necessary to take more notice of what drawing is doing in a particular way. So we need to be able to respond to people who view or read our research if they ask, why did you use drawing? Why not something else? What did drawing enable? What did drawing do? But there's also this huge overlap between drawing research and drawing practice. Involvement and interest and experience in the physicality and the effort, the concentration, sometimes the messiness of drawing as a practice feeds in to the understanding of how drawing can be used as research. So I began gathering with other people interested / obsessed with drawing in and around the university just over 10 years ago. So the support and the organisation for drawing research has been from within the School of Art and Media and its previous iterations here at the University of Brighton. And more recently, it's also been from the Centre of Arts and Wellbeing. Some of you may know there's a specialist strand of drawing research there in relation to health and wellbeing. It's a particular interest of mine. But those involved in drawing research have always been from a range of very diverse subjects. So whilst drawing has this particular place in the arts, it doesn't belong exclusively to the art world. It doesn't obediently sit within one way of framing research. It doesn't sit in one research paradigm. So we've got subjects such as medicine, archaeology, design, engineering, just as a kind of few examples, that have got really long and distinctive traditions of drawing and of their own drawing systems, which they use in teaching and professional practice. But also use of drawing now as a research method seems to be increasing. I think maybe particularly in the social sciences. That's a bit anecdotal. I'm not any way of sort of proving that, but it seems to be a lot of interest in social sciences. So today what you'll have seen from the abstracts and the biographies of the speakers, the facilitators, is we've got particular input from psychology and architecture, as well as from within the arts, broadly speaking. So why should this be? People will be speaking for themselves throughout the day, of course, but I wondered if part of the reason that drawing lends itself in this way is that it's both agile and plural. What do I mean by that? So by agile, I think there is at one level a kind of simplicity to the act of drawing, to making marks, that can be sort of carried out, adapted, transferred, maybe translated into lots of different contexts. So in the case of research, drawing can also be adapted to many different kinds of research questions. You might be asking very different things and find a way to use research. So when you boil it down, of course, I guess in a sense, and this is trying to slightly sidestep the great debate about what drawing is and how you can conceive of what drawing is, but basically you need a tool, a service, a bit of space and time. It's a slight simplification. But that could be pencil and paper, pen on interactive screen, needle on cloth, stick on wet sand. I bet all of us have done that at some point in our lives, or any number of other variations. So very agile. But plural, when I'm suggesting that drawing is plural, what I really mean is that there are so many dimensions to the way the drawing process and the outcome might be understood. So what kind of work can drawing do when it's employed as a method? What purposes can it be put to? So these are just a few thoughts. They're definitely not mutually exclusive. They're not intended as separate, discrete thoughts. They might be blended or they might overlap, and they're not exhaustive. But some of these might possibly be relevant to some of today's sessions. So drawing can be used to witness and record. And that might be as a very hasty, spontaneous memoir in the brush of the moment, or it might be really systematic and detailed recording. But it can also be used as a means to notice in a different way, to pay close attention, to use all the senses as experiential and embodied. And of course it can be used interpersonally, relationally. It can elicit and encourage dialogue, for example, conversation, and it can enable perceptions to be surfaced and perhaps to begin to be articulated. I think drawing also sometimes is used to explore different subjectivities or multiple subject positions. It can focus perhaps on who or what is not usually represented. And drawing can be used as a space to explore thought or imagination, to reflect on oneself as self-study. And there may be a few of us in here who do that as a practice or have done it. And of course, it can also be a way to be present and in the moment. So when I put that group of thoughts down when I was preparing for today, I sort of stood back and thought, oh, it looks like I think drawing is the answer to all things. It looks like I'm going, it solves everything, you don't need any other methods. And it just made me think that one of the big challenges, certainly I think, in research, is how do you keep a little bit of critical and reflective distance, especially from a subject, in this case also a practice that you love or are really invested in. How to do that? So I just wanted to share a couple of questions that I try and ask myself, or have tried to ask myself when I use drawing in research. So the image on the left refers to, it's something, I'm currently editing a book with another drawing researcher called Curie Scott. Vanessa, Mark, Duncan Bullen, speakers for the day, are also contributing chapters to this book. And it's about drawing health and well-being. When I put the book proposal out and you get all your reviews back and you sort of gird your loins and you read them, one of the things that really struck me is one of the reviewers said, oh, okay, you know, all very interesting. Is drawing always good? Is it inevitably good? Is it ever bad? Does it ever have harmful effect? Well, of course, we thought about that a lot in our own project work. Both Curie and I, as researchers, have had the joy of making research ethics applications. But it pulled me up short because of the directness of the question, and it's really lodged afresh in my mind about there are a lot of anxieties and doubts. In fact, we were just having a chat before the session started about this. When you ask people to draw, it brings up anxiety in a lot of people. And that actually is even in the art school. In addition, if you're working with people about complex and sensitive issues, it can go quite deep, quite quickly, to use drawing. So I guess the question is really, how do we stay attuned to this? How do we consider what that means? How do we meet that challenge when we use drawing? And then the point really on the right was fresh in my mind recently, because I had some discussions with psychotherapist and drawing researcher Angela Rogers, who's written really interesting work on drawing. And she was reminding me and talking to me about the seductiveness of drawing. And the aesthetic appeal of drawing might well be the focus of your research, but it might not. Or it might be that there's a complex set of entangled issues that you have to tease out. So if we make the decision to use drawing in research, we kind of have to ask ourselves, okay, why are we using drawing? Exactly in what way? What's the point of the research? How is the visual impact related to the intended concern of the research? So that all sounds a bit stern, but they're sort of like internal dialogues that I have around how do we manage these things. I'm really interested in what other people think and how they manage them. So just to conclude really, before I hand over to Matt, there's a book I go back to quite regularly when I'm thinking about drawing, which is Marion Milner's On Not Being Able to Paint. And it's a bit of a classic. I'm sure quite a few of you will know about it. It was published in 1950, and it was originally written for teachers. So it's broadly speaking about the creative process and the value of what Milner calls free drawing. But what I find really useful when I go back to that book is the way Milner pinpoints certain moments of realisation in her creative process. She talks about things that will be familiar to a lot of us. Intense dissatisfaction with drawing according to taught rules of perspective, single viewpoint, fixed eye level. This is familiar stuff. But then she describes how she doesn't want to be detached and separated from the objects, the things she's drawing. And she rejects the idea that that's reasonable, or that counts as common sense, a common sense way of looking at the world. It's much more useful, she says, to use an uncommon sense. So I just really like that idea of hers, of what that might mean, an uncommon sense, because it seems to me allied to a state of openness, a state of investigation, maybe trying to look at your assumptions and not put them aside, but be conscious of them, or try to be conscious of them. And I thought that might be quite a nice notion for us to use at the start of the day. So, that's everything I wanted to say. I'm not going to leave time for questions here because I don't want things to get laid right at the beginning.